how closely do you think your book would parallel our future?
So I don't think it really is a book about the future. I think it's a book about, in fact, the recent past. It's really a parable about the dot-com crash. I lived in San Francisco through the boom and the crash, and I saw what happened when all the money left the system, and a lot of the people left too, but the people who stayed behind kept on making, even though there weren't Aeron chairs and foosball tables. They just kept doing it. And that was the most amazing thing for me. It was kind of, how the Grinch stole Christmas. And I guess the one thing that's always been missing from How the Grinch Stole Christmas is what the Who's thought when they came down, they didn't see the tree and decided to celebrate Christmas anyway. And I guess that's a little bit of the inspiration for this book, is what does it feel like to go on making even when the money's left the system and you're only doing it because it's a holy quest.
That really leads to the whole motivation behind makers. The culture is about sharing. Do you think that's a culture that's going to permeate the rest of society?
Yeah, I mean, I think that actually the sharing culture is, another word for it is the Enlightenment. Before the Enlightenment, we didn't have science, we had alchemy. The primary difference between science and alchemy is that every alchemist finds out for himself that drinking mercury is a bad idea. The advent of publication of results, of outcomes, of public sharing of scientific information and knowledge was the Enlightenment. It was the great leap in human progress that ended the Dark Ages. And so, I think the sharing culture is already here and widespread. I think that there's a movement to enclose it, and a lot of people involved in the copyright fight have compared it to the enclosure movement, which was the movement to enclose the commons, the common area where people graze their sheep, and to privatize them and to turn them into places where someone could seek rent on their neighbors.
As we're talking about the Creative Commons, do you think that kind of the legal boundaries are going to hinder the growth of the culture, of maker culture?
Well, I think they already are. I mean, you have on the one hand this idea that everything can be owned, and that everything should be owned, and that without ownership no one will do anything. And contrasting with that is this idea that sharing has a direct benefit to people who are making, which is that other people will help you make stuff. And these two philosophies are in some ways fundamentally irreconcilable.
Can you elaborate a little?
Well, if you're someone who thinks that the first thing you should do whenever you have a great idea is patent it, and you contrast that with someone who thinks that the first thing you should do when you have a great idea is tell everyone you know about it to see if they can think of improvements. Those are two really different philosophies. The first one is about setting up a toll booth between your idea and the world. And in some ways, there's a kind of streak of egotism in it that says, my originalism trumps the originalism of all the people on whose shoulders I stand. That while I got to build on the work of others, no one should build on my own, or at least not without my permission.
Mm-hmm. So do you think we're going to become a world full of more entrepreneurial citizens almost?
I don't know about entrepreneurial, so it's an interesting question, because one of the things about the free culture, if you want to call it that, is that although free can be what Chris Anderson calls freemium, a way to make money off of free stuff, free can also exist outside the market and for non-market motives. The famous programmer adage that open source software is written to scratch an itch. There is a lot of our society that we organize outside of markets. You and your family probably don't have competitive bids over where you're going to spend your holidays. And when you go to work in a firm, the desks aren't awarded according to market forces. The desks are awarded according to something that looks a lot more Marxist. I mean, if from each to his ability, according to his ability, to each according to his need, does not describe the internal functioning of a corporation, I don't know what does. So there's a lot of our life, religion, the military, family, fun and pleasure, that isn't organized around market principles. And so entrepreneurial might be the wrong word. I think creative might be the right word. And some of that creativity is entrepreneurial, and some of it lives outside of market forces.
Yeah. And what do you think some of the risks and issues are around maker culture?
Well, I mean, in some ways history just repeats itself. So of course one of the great risks is that you'll have that seminal moment that occurred when Bill Gates. Do you know about Bill Gates's letter about If I can't protect my ideas, I won't go on making things, and I've made this important thing. He wrote a basic interpreter. No one else will make it. I mean, I think that in maker culture there will always be kind of people who want to enclose and people who want to open. And so I expect that fight will be fought out again. Other risks really revolve around larger policy issues, like maker culture relies so much on the fact that networks are open and free, that anyone can upload a design, for example, without having to first prove to a lawyer that it doesn't infringe on copyright. And if the design is a purely non-commercial undertaking or a small-scale commercial undertaking, paying a lawyer a few $1,000s to aver that it doesn't infringe on a copyright swamps any value that you might get out of publishing it. So that publishing starts to contract in order to leave intact the legal fiction that there's nothing infringing on the internet. So that can be very dangerous, I think.
And what are you most excited about in the future with MakerCulture?
What am I most excited about? I don't know. That's a really good question. I guess I see 3D printers today as being in the kind of funky proto-PC stage, and I'm really looking forward to the laptop version.